Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video, doing GWV Sunday Round-Up for today's first video. So it's going to be your usual eclectic Sunday afternoon mix of this and that, looking at things like solar activity, sea surface temperature, anomalies, and so on. So I'll get on with the Sunday Round-Up for you very shortly. Just say that coming up this afternoon, we're going to have the seasonal model round-up from the GWV and Meteo France long-range seasonal models. That's going to take us through the rest of winter, through the spring into start of the summer. That'll be with you around 3 o'clock. And then between 6 and 8, there's going to be a live chat with myself and Quantum talking about what's been going on with the models. We'll be taking your questions. It'll be interactive. You'll be able to ask questions on GWV's website in the comment section, and also on the social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, taking questions there, and on Quantum's YouTube channel as well. So that'll be coming up between 6 and 8 this evening. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about what's been going on, because a couple of days ago it looks odds on that we would get the wind into the east, pulling bitterly cold air out of Russia, and have quite a cold and snowy spell of weather. That's been pretty much eradicated by the model output over this weekend. So it's going to be staying cold. We're going to be keeping winds generally from a northerly direction, sort of North Atlantic type winds, but those true really cold, maybe even severe cold easy winds, they're off the table for the time being. They may come back in future model runs though, but this side of February it looks like we're going to struggle to get the wind properly into the east. But we'll talk more about that in today's video later on, when we get into that section of the Sunday Roundup. Now, before I do anything else, I've got to say a big thank you to our latest patron. So Chris Freeman has become GWV's 59th patron. So a big thank you to Chris Freeman for becoming GWV's 59th patron. We're closing in on 60 patrons now for GWVs. A big thank you to all of the patrons for GWVs. If you would like to become a patron for GWVs, then all you need to do is come to the GWVs Patreon page. We link this at all pages at GWVs and in the description at YouTube. You just come to Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can pledge an ongoing monthly donation. It can be anything as little as $1 a month upwards. Just give an ongoing monthly donation to GWVs, and you're helping us to pay for the website. The other way of giving a donation is through PayPal. I had loads of PayPal donations, so if you would like to give a donation to GWVs via PayPal, all you need to do is come to the GWVs PayPal page, sign into your PayPal account, and then give a one-off donation. You're helping us to pay for our website, and you'll get a shout-out in the videos. We'll say big thank you to you for your kindness and generosity. Unless you would rather stay anonymous, if you would, just leave a little note with your donation. And again, big thank you to all of donors and all of the patrons. GWVs, special thank you to Chris Freeman for becoming our latest patron. Got some pictures to show you. So this was sent through on the GWV's Facebook page by James Robert Evans. This is Keith in Scotland earlier in the week, and pretty snow-covered scene there. Up there in the north of Scotland, proper wintry scene. Snow has been falling across northern parts of the country over the past few days, of course. So pretty wintry scene up there in Keith in Scotland. This was also shared with us on Facebook. This is from Jasper Toby MJ Jackson. This is in the North Midlands. So again, I think this was on Friday night. Again, pretty snow covered there up in the North Midlands. There was some pretty decent amounts of snow. We're talking about a centimetre or two of snow, which isn't a lot really, but given that it's been pretty much a snowless winter up to this point, that was a fairly significant snowfall there up in the North Midlands. This was shared with us on Twitter. So this is from, let's see, this is from James Mooney. This is up in Sheffield on Friday night. Snow laying pretty deep up there in Sheffield. They always seem to get a lot of snow up in Sheffield somehow. I suppose because it's pretty high up. And this one was shared yesterday. This is up on the North York Moors. Pretty bleak up there on the North York Moors. Craig at Craigie88 was saying on Twitter with a pretty bleak looking snowman there up on the North York Moors, and there we have a very bleak looking shot of the North York Moors yesterday in the snow. So if you would like to have your pictures featured in videos, all you need to do is share them with us on our Twitter and Facebook pages. So we link to those in the description at YouTube, of course. You can share them in the comment box at GWV, or you can email them to us at GWV@gmail.com. When we've got the time, we are always happy to feature the pics in the videos. Just depends whether we've got time to do it on any given day. But that's how you can get your pictures shared in the videos. Big thanks to everyone for sharing their pictures, and hopefully we'll have some more snow pictures coming up if the weather starts getting colder. Now things have started updating at the sea surface temperature anomaly website section of NOAA. So last week, of course, they said that they hadn't updated it since the end of last year. They have got those charts updated now. So this is how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking on the 3rd of January. So the three areas of interest in particular, we've got the ENSO region just there, got the Northern Pacific just here, and got the North Atlantic over there. That's how things were looking at the start of the month. This is the very latest in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies. This is from the 17th of January, so back on Thursday. Excuse me. And let's deal with ENSO first of all. So this is the ENSO region just here. We still have this very, very weak signature of El Nino. Let's go back to the start of the month. That situation in the ENSO region at the start of the month, this situation now. Still a weak signature for El Nino, but it is fading, it is weakening, I think, over time, as you expect it to, because these ENSO events always reach their peak around Christmas, and then they kind of fade out through the first 2, 3, 4 months of the year. So it was a very weak El Nino anyway, and it certainly isn't getting any stronger. Going further north into the Northern Pacific, that was the situation at the start of the month, this situation now. So very little change up there in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. Remains quite a bit warmer than average, with those sea surface temperature anomalies close to the Pacific coast of Canada and North America. In the North Atlantic, again, that was how things were looking at the start of the month. This is how things are looking now. So generally the North Atlantic has warmed up a little bit. We're beginning to lose these colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland than we've had. That we've had for quite a long time. And things are also warming up in the tropical Atlantic over towards Africa as well. So the Atlantic is generally becoming a little bit warmer. Now this is not a tripole, so it's not a perfect setup for a negative NAO. When we have a tripole, we have the three bands of warm, cool and warm in that sort of position. We haven't got that yet, and we probably won't do before the end of the winter anyway. But just as we're losing those cooler than average sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland, and we're beginning to warm things up in the tropical Atlantic, this possibly will help us as we get through to the final stage of winter, will possibly help us to start thinking a little bit more anyway about a chance of a negative North Atlantic oscillation. The main problem this winter, there have been two real problems with this winter to get cold weather. The first one is the Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, having it cold, the horseshoe-shaped cold band around there from sort of the southwest of Greenland down to here towards the north of Africa. That's the first thing, because that completely goes against a negative North Atlantic oscillation. The other problem has been the rapid transition into the westerly QBO. They're the two big problems that we've been working with for this winter. Now, we're going to continue with that westerly QBO. It's going to carry on strengthening over the next few months, of course. So there's something we can do about that. But in terms of the Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, they are possibly becoming a little bit better. Perhaps not to get a negative NAO, but certainly so that the positive phase of the NAO, so that the westerlies aren't quite as favoured as the North Atlantic oscillation is beginning to get that little bit, as the North Atlantic Ocean, I should say, is beginning to get that little bit warmer. These warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies close to the African coast are interesting, because if they start to spread out across the tropical Atlantic as we go through the next few months, then we'll get to the summer and possibly again we'll have a fairly active hurricane season. So, but that's a very long way off. It's only January. Have to see how those sea surface temperature anomalies are looking by the time we get through to the end of the spring and the start of the summer. Anyway, good news that the sea surface temperature anomaly maps are updating again at NOAA. So going through to the Southern Oscillation Index. This is from the University of Berlin. This is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere in the Southern Pacific Ocean. When the SOI is in its negative phase, the atmosphere is reflecting El Nino. When the SOI is in its positive phase, the atmosphere is reflecting La Nina. Now, what's happening at the moment with the SOI is that we have been having some negative bursts of the Southern Oscillation Index. So, for example, on the 5th of January, went down to minus 18.60. And that tells you that the atmosphere at that point was reflecting quite strongly an El Nino event. But recently we've been getting more in way of positivity of the SOI. So the past 3 days, the 18th, the 19th and the 20th, all coming out with positive numbers, plus 5, plus 8, plus 11. That's the atmosphere going into a state that's more reflective of La Nina, of a cold event. And so this kind of like puts the dampener on an El Nino, and it's the sort of thing you'd expect to be seeing at this point now, because the El Nino will very rapidly start to unravel. As I say, it was a very weak El Nino anyway, but we will be moving back, I think, towards ENSO neutral by the time we get through to the spring. So that's how the SOI is looking. Generally still trading positive and negative numbers, as it has been through the past few months. It's a reason, or one of the reasons, that we've not been able to get a proper El Nino event going. Generally trading those positive and negative numbers, possibly even shifting a little bit more towards the positive side of things. Solar activity looking like this on the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net. So no sunspots at all. Another day without any sunspots on the solar disk on our side of this. This is the GWV Sunday Round-Up solar activity tracker sent through by our good friend James Atquill, updated up to yesterday, the 19th of January. We can see that again at a really low level of solar activity once more. So the orange line here is depicting each individual day's sunspots, and you see we're having another run without any sunspots. It's been several days now that we've not had any sunspots at all. That means that the trend lines are moving downwards again. The thick green and the thick red lines there, virtually down on the bottom of the tracker. So again, we remain at solar minimum. We're going to be staying around at solar minimum for at least the next 6 to 12 months' time, and we can expect an ongoing period of really weak solar activity. Many days, we may get several days or even weeks without any sunspots appearing at all when we get through to solar minimum. And this does increase the chance of northern blocking and colder winters for the UK and the Europe in particular. But it's not a guarantee of anything, just increasing the risk of colder winters, but it isn't in itself a guarantee of anything. The weather is dynamic every year. It's different. Just because you're at solar minimum doesn't mean that you'll definitely get a cold winter, as we're proving so far with this winter. Of course, big thank you to James for sending that through, and we'll keep an eye on the solar tracker over the next few weeks and months. Haven't showed you this since we signed off on the winter update, so this is how things are looking in terms of snow cover across Russia and Europe, across Eurasia at the moment. This is updated up to yesterday, 17th of January. You can see that, well, obviously all of Russia is going to be covered with snow, as you would expect. That snow line has pushed into eastern parts of Europe as well, so most of Eastern Europe covered with snow. Central Europe, it's a little bit more patchier. I think we will see that growing over the next few days as things become quite a lot colder across central parts of Europe. Pretty bleak, you have to say, for snow cover in the west of Europe. Most of Scandinavia is covered, except in the very, very far south of Sweden. Otherwise, most of Scandinavia appears to have snow cover. But going further west towards the UK and Ireland, very little snow cover there. We have got some across Scotland, but very little further south across England and Wales, and over across Ireland, very little there. Very little across France, and very little across Spain and Portugal either. Now, you'll remember when we were doing winter updates that this website, the National Ice Centre, which is a part of NOAA, but this website was throwing up a website unsecure notice due to the fact that they'd gone to HTTPS, so they'd gone to a certificate, a secure certificate of the website, but it was a military certificate that wasn't being recognised by Google, Chrome, and other website browsers. So whether it's Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, they was all throwing up this website unsecure notice. They have now moved to a recognised certificate, so much easier now to get to this website. You could override the website unsecure notice as we was doing for the winter updates, because it's a perfectly safe website. It's just that they're using a certificate that wasn't being recognised by the web browsers. But they have now moved to a certificate that is being recognised by web browsers, or either the web browsers are recognising their military certificates, because this part of NOAA was actually being coming under the umbrella of the sort of military side of NOAA. So that's why I was using a military certificate. Anyway, the upshot is it's now much easier to get to this National Ice Centre website and see these charts if you would like to do that. We linked this at the links page at GWV and also in the description at YouTube. I'll leave a link to this website in the description at YouTube. Now, much easier to get to these charts if you want to. So that also is good news. Right, this is how things are looking in the stratosphere at 10 HPA over North Pole. This is from the JMA. So things are cooling down quickly now. Of course, we had the southern stratospheric warming over the North Pole at the end of December at 10 HPA, which is one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. We're now back down to average. The black line has dropped very quickly over the past couple of days, 2 or 3 days, moved down to the grey line. So things cooling down quickly at 10 HPA, as you would expect them to. It's got to get back to normal after that major event that took place at the end of December with that southern stratospheric warming. If you go a bit lower down to 30 HPA, which is slightly closer to the troposphere, things there are also cooling down. So that's the southern stratospheric warming occurring around the new year. This is where we are right now with the temperature at 30 HPA. So yes, it has cooled down, but it hasn't dropped as much as it has at 10 HPA. I expect that drop, though, is coming at 30 HPA as well. Zonal winds are about to start moving back into their westerly phase. So we had a reversal of the zonal winds. This is from weatheriscool.com. We had a reversal of the zonal winds at the start of the year associated with the southern stratospheric warming. Of course, the zonal winds went easterly. They're still in reverse just at the moment, but the GFS models are showing that we're going to be moving those zonal winds into positivity over the next couple of weeks. Still below trend, though. The black line is the trend for the strength of the zonal winds. They should be starting to weaken now anyway, but we are still under trend with the zonal winds, but they are going to be moving out of reversal in the coming days. Remember, this is all looking at the stratosphere, though. This doesn't mean that in the troposphere, in the boundary level of the atmosphere where weather is actually taking place, this doesn't mean that we can't get blocking appearing. Actually, there's always a time lag on this. So as the zonal winds sort of recover in the stratosphere, and as the polar vortex begins to start to get itself back together again after these southern stratospheric warmings in the stratosphere, lower down in the troposphere, you'll tend to be getting, that's when you'll tend to be getting your tropospheric response as the bubble of warmth is pushed down via the cooling that's going on in the stratosphere now. It pushes the bubble of warmth down into the troposphere, and that's when you can actually start to set up those blocking areas of high pressure. So to get a tropospheric response, you're actually looking now for the stratosphere to start to recover and begin to get itself back towards a more normal situation. You notice the zonal winds are being forecast to go very stronger than average by the CFSV2 indicated by the 3 pink and 1 blue line. Forecasting the zonal winds to go quite strong through the course of February. and into March. So that could mean we perhaps go into a stormier spell of weather maybe late in February and through to March, but of course that remains to be seen. ECMWF from the University of Berlin also showing that the zonal winds at both 10 and HPA are going to start moving into back in towards their westerly phase. So at the moment, still they're sort of in reverse, particularly at 10 HPA. Next few days should see the zonal winds starting to stage something of a recovery. Still much weaker though than they were before the sudden stratospheric warming. Temperatures at 10 HPA are looking like this. So this is from meteoseal.fr. So you see the blue colours are beginning to return. We're beginning to get a bit of a recovery taking place in terms of the temperatures at 10 HPA, the cold temperatures 10 HPA. That tells us about the polar vortex. It's just starting to begin to recover itself from the major sort of damage that it went through when we had that sudden stratospheric warming. And you see that these blue colours are getting deeper as we're running on into the final days of January and into the start of February. Definite cool down is taking place there into the start of February. Quite a cold stratosphere actually, 10 HPA by then. But again, remember at this point we're then looking for the tropospheric response. So just because it's turning cold in the stratosphere after the sudden stratospheric warming and the temperature is beginning to is cooling down and we're beginning to get recovery of the polar vortex at its roots down in the troposphere, this is the point where you're looking to get your blocking area of high pressure and tropospheric response. This is how the GFS temperature and upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking. Now, I said in the video yesterday and the day before that they wasn't updating the charts at New West Central for the ensemble, so I wasn't able to bring you the list of places that people have suggested that they want to see for this part of the video. They've got things updated and they've come up with a new chart. So I think this is what they've been working on while they've not been updating since Wednesday. We've got a new looking graph to show you here. It looks rather interesting, I have to say, the way they've done this. So the red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average, and we're looking at Eutoxeter today. Now, what they've done is change the scale. So we're going from plus 20 in terms of the upper air temperature, 20 Celsius up there, down to minus 20 Celsius down here. So obviously we're going to be colder than average. You see that quite clearly, except for this little warm-up that's occurring just here for Eutoxeter. And again, this is a place that somebody has suggested that we look at. So in the period when we're supposed to be getting the easterly winds at the end of this week, kind of like 25th, 26th of January, we're now actually bringing an area of low pressure in from the Atlantic, and for a couple of days turning things a little bit milder. But before that, we've got quite a lot of cold weather coming up over the next few days, and very quickly, once that pushes through, we go cold again. Now, to go into the freezer, you need to go to underneath minus 10 at 850 HPA. That is now where minus 10 is for the upper air temperatures on this scale, and this is kind of like where minus 15 is. So when we do go into the freezer, it's going to look quite dramatic if we ever go into the freezer. We will at some point, may not be this winter, but at some point we will go into freezer type cold again. And you'll see the lines going down to that sort of level. So that's going to look quite dramatic because it'll be mingled in with the precipitation spikes around the bottom of the chart. Again, it's purely because of the way they've altered the scale of the graph. So what we see is that it's going to be pretty cold for the next few days in Eutoxeter. It's going to go a little bit milder towards the end of the week, right at the point where we're expecting those easterly winds. But it doesn't take very long at all before we start pushing colder air back through once again. And the general theme is definitely one of being cold, albeit not very or severely cold. Although, again, at the end of the graph, we do have some of these ensemble members going down into the freezer. So they're outliers, but a few of them are dipping down underneath minus 10 at 850 HPA. Including the operational run of the GFS, which did go quite cold in its extended range around the start of February. But of course, after this failed easterly over the next few days, how seriously we take that, I'm not sure. So it's still the general theme, really, of cold and unsettled. Precipitation-wise, looks quite unsettled. Weather coming up. Excuse me. So we've got precipitation spike there. That's bringing in wet weather in the early part of the week. There might be some back-edge snow with that. And then beyond that, it looks quite unsettled. As it's quite cold, it's also quite unsettled with regular precipitation spikes. And there will be wintry potential with these cold upper air temperatures coming through. Again, very little sign of very cold or freezer cold weather at the moment, but it's an ongoing risk that we might get some very cold weather at some point in the next few weeks. Temperature anomalies from the 20th to 28th of January are colder than average, below average temperature anomalies through most parts of Europe. The UK is included in that. Not very cold, but certainly underneath the average. Precipitation anomalies are close to or a little bit drier than average. I would expect those to trend more unsettled. Over in America, the east of the states is going to be plunged into very cold conditions. So again, this is a temperature anomaly from the 20th to 28th of January. Very cold in the east of the states, milder in the west. Precipitation anomalies show that the south and southwest of America very dry, otherwise quite unsettled. They've got a real northeaster going on the east of the states at the moment. This area of low pressure is running up the eastern seaboard, and this area of low pressure might be one of the factors that has cancelled the easterly winds actually for us, because it's going to move out into the North Atlantic, probably pep up the jet stream just a little bit. So at the moment we've got this low pressure running up the eastern side of America. It's going to become a proper northeaster. There it is at midnight, just sitting off the eastern seaboard of the states, putting down this very cold air out of Canada into east parts of America. There'll be a lot of snow associated with that. And then the low pressure moves off up towards Newfoundland, and we get this ridge building in, which of course will overlay very snow covered ground. There's the upper air temperatures looking very, very cold, severely cold for much of the northeastern parts of America. As I say, this area of low pressure is possibly responsible for cancelling, or partly responsible anyway, you can't put it all down to that, because if the Atlantic setup was correct, if we've got the right setup in terms of high pressure around Iceland and low pressure through the Azores, if the Atlantic setup was correct, this low pressure northeaster wouldn't make a great deal of difference to our weather. But it's going to run up the eastern seaboard, it's going to get to Newfoundland, and then it's going to move out into the North Atlantic, and it is possibly one of the factors that is that's kind of like destroying our expected easterly. So thank you, America, for that. This is how the GFS midnight run was looking, and we've got this northerly wind coming down across the country on Wednesday, and it's going through into Thursday. This is the key point, of course, where a few days ago we was going to hook this high pressure up to Scandinavia and get wind into the east. It's still having a go at doing it. We've still got some ridging over Scandinavia up here, and we're trying to move this high pressure northwards, but the problem is these areas of low pressure around here, they're just running over the top of this high pressure and stopping the link up. So as we go through to the end of the week, instead of getting this easterly, we actually just run the low pressure in, this low pressure here around Iceland, we run it in over the top, and that means that we don't get the easterly wind, but it will be quite cold up to the end of the week. Before it goes a little bit milder over next weekend, we bring this milder sector through across the country, probably with quite a bit of heavy rain on Saturday. But it's not very long at all before we're going back into northerlies. So by the time we get through to Monday the 28th of January, we're already starting to turn the wind back into the north once again. And as we go up towards day 10, actually it starts trying to get wind back into the east again. As I said a few minutes ago, how seriously we take this after this week's failed easterly, I'm not sure, but that's what it's showing at day 10. It's Wednesday the 30th of January. Again, we've got this idea of low pressure sinking away to our south, pulling the wind into the east with pressure building around Greenland and Iceland. That started pulling very cold air from the east. And look at that, by the time you get through to the 31st of January, final day of the month, we've got a long fetch east to northeasterly wind, bringing cold air and the chance of snow to many parts of the country. Quite a prolonged cold spell of weather then setting up with the midnight run of the GFS as we get through to the first days of February. That's as far as we can go up to the 5th of February. It's looking cold generally. Low pressure is stuck down to our south. We've got quite a lot of blocking. Winds are generally from an easterly direction. So the GFS midnight run setting up quite a prolonged cold spell of weather. 6 o'clock GFS run has been updating as I've been speaking. So this is how things are looking on Wednesday with the very latest GFS run. Low pressure moving down the eastern side of the country on Wednesday. Quite cold. Winds in from the north. Then it has a go on Thursday at getting this ridge building from the southwest up to the north. But these areas of low pressure in between just not allowing that link up to take place. So instead we just keep these low pressures rolling over top of the high pressure with the jet stream, and there is some quite mild air starting to move around the top of this high pressure as well, just temporarily. So the end of the coming week and into next weekend, relatively mild for a couple of days instead of those bitterly cold easterly winds. We're into more of a westerly on the 25th and the 26th of January. Again, though, it's not very long before we're pulling wind back into the north. So this is Monday, 28th of January. Again, winds are turning into the north and colder air starting to push southwards across the UK. We go up to day 10. And again, it's the same idea as the midnight run of the GFS, getting this ridge building from the Atlantic and pushing northwards. That turns the winds into the north and northeast. So it looks like, once again, it's setting up quite a prolonged cold spell. If we go a little bit further on, this is how things look on the final day of January. Again, it looks pretty cold, I have to say. The winds are in from the east and the northeast. There's quite a blocking signal up to our north. So the 6 o'clock run of the GFS looks like it's keeping things cold overall, or turning things cold overall for the end of January and into the start of February. If we get through to the very end of the 6 o'clock GFS run, it does start to move low pressure back in from off the Atlantic right at the very end on the 5th of February. But basically the GFS, after this milder interruption coming up at the very end of this week and into next weekend, a couple of days of milder weather, Friday, Saturday, it very quickly wants to get us back into colder conditions once again. Although probably no sign of those brutal cold easterly winds that it was suggesting a couple of days ago. Not yet, anyway. GEM, the Canadian model, has this low pressure moving away to our east on Wednesday, looking pretty cold through to the end of the week. And actually the GEM does still, for a while, get us into a northeasterly wind on Friday. So this is really, really close, actually, to getting this ridge building over Scandinavia and pushing this ridge in the Atlantic northwards. It's very close to doing a link up between those two areas of high pressure, and for a while, as I say, on Friday it does actually get us into a cold east or northeasterly wind, but by the time we get through to Saturday, that's being cut off as the low pressure to our north pushes in from the Atlantic Ocean. Again, though, it doesn't take long to start getting back into colder weather, and this is how we finish up day 10, Wednesday the 30th of January. Has high pressure still to our north and northeast. Low pressure is being forced southwards, and got a lot of cold air sitting just to our east and northeast, trying to push our way. So the GEM is very close to keeping us cold over the over next weekend, and also pulling in some very cold air from the east as well. ECMWF, and this is the first model that wobbled on this easterly, of course, the first one that started wobbling on Friday night. This is how it's looking for Wednesday this morning. It's got this northerly wind coming in across the country. On Wednesday will be quite cold. Then on Thursday, again, it's having a real go at getting this ridge building from the Atlantic up to Scandinavia through Thursday and Friday, but this area of low pressure here around Iceland, that's the spoiler, that's rolling in over the top. I think that's associated with the northeaster that they've got in America at the moment. And as we go to next weekend, on Saturday it looks quite mild, bringing in a westerly wind, but by Sunday already the winds are turning back into the north again. And then as you go through to Monday, 28th, Tuesday 29th, and Wednesday 30th, day 10, looking quite cold overall once again. So it's cold and unsettled really after slightly milder interruption for a couple of days on Friday and Saturday. Finally, the CFS V2 looking like this. These are the 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. First weekly period takes us from the 20th to the 26th of January. Below average heights to our south. above average heights out to our west. We look quite cold and unsettled. The flow and the jet stream is doing something like that. Week 2 is the 27th of January to the 2nd of February, blocking up to the north and a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic, with low pressure over to the south of the UK, winds being pulled in from the east or the northeast. That looks cold and wintry for the end of January, the start of February. Again, very strong blocking signal in week 3. It's the 3rd to the 9th of February. High pressures over Iceland, low pressure to the south of the UK. Again, expected to be pulling in cold, sort of northeasterly winds with back to them. And then we go through to week 4. It's the 10th to the 16th of February. Again, real strong blocking signal around Greenland. The low pressure is just that little bit further north, though. So again, this is something that CFS is trending with at the moment for week 4. Just slightly less cold, but overall still unsettled. Temperature wise, the coming week from the 20th to 26th of January is colder than average. Cold week overall, and cold on average for most parts of Central Europe. Very cold there. We go through to week 2. It's the 27th of January to 2nd of February. Colder than average again. Most of Europe plunged into the freezer in week 2. Then we go through so where I go through to week 3, which is just there, and it's the 3rd to the 9th of February. Again, it looks cold in this week, so prolonged cold spell setting up. At some point, you have to think that we're going to get some snow out of this. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 10th to 16th of February. Still a little bit cold on average, but just showing that cold easing off a little bit then as we're moving into middle of February. February overall is looking like this in terms of the 700 millibar height anomaly. Looks like that strong blocking signal for February. High pressure to the north, to the northern latitudes, low pressure to the south. You would expect to be pulling in quite a cold east or northeasterly wind, and the temperature anomaly for February is forecast to be colder than average, which is something that you don't see very often with these charts. Colder than average for the UK and Ireland, most of Northern Europe being forecast to have a colder than average month as well. So despite the letdown with this easterly in the next few days, it does look as though the overall trend is still cold. It's still a cold trend. And whether we do pull in really cold easterly winds, that remains to be seen. But temperatures can be expected to stay below average overall for the rest of January, despite those slightly milder couple of days on Friday and Saturday. Temperatures overall look like they're going to be staying below average, and at some point you'd have to think with this we have got the chance of some snow coming through as well. I'm sure we will have that at some point in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's just again a question of how cold is it going to get. Will we lock into real cold Arctic or Siberian air, or will we just continue to have these regular northerly shots? And cold enough for snow at times, but not particularly severe. That's the question that we're going to have to answer over the coming few days. Right, that's your GWV Sunday Roundup for today. We'll be back later on this afternoon with the ECMWF and Meteo France seasonal model update. Tonight, between 6 and 8, got the live chat going over all of this and taking your questions. So come back for that between 6 and 8 this evening. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.